Before any game of Ephemeral Path may begin, each player needs to construct a figure set. A figure set consists of between 2 and 4 figures. A figure may be a miniature, a token, or a standee, anything that has a base between 19 and 67 millimeters and is circular. Figure sets have, again, between 2 to 4 figures, and each figure must have an associated spec sheet. In this first part of the video, I'm going to walk you through how to make a spec sheet for each figure. Spec sheets can be found and built at ephemeralpath.com/figbuilder. In this example, we're going to make a figure spec sheet for the figure Mira. If you've looked at the rule sheet, you'll know that Mira is a female elf who is used in many of the rules demonstration images. I'm first going to start by naming the figure and giving that figure a class. Classes show up in this drop-down list. They're disruptors, tacticians, leaders, and runners. The class you choose will dictate your base point range that's available and what abilities can be added to that figure's spec sheet. Next, I'm going to give Mira a description. Mira is a female elf. The importance of descriptions may be if you have two similar miniatures that need to be distinguished from one another. For example, if we had two female elves, maybe one was painted slightly different, and that information would be put into the description section. The next thing I'm going to add is the figure's base specs. Base specs include hit points, movement, force, and range. You can see with disruptors, they are allowed between 10 and 25 base specs. What that means is that 10 and 25 points can be distributed between these four places. First, I'm going to begin with hit points. I'm going to give Mira 6 hit points. What that means is that throughout the game, Mira may take 6 damage before having to be removed from the board. I'm going to give Mira a movement of 8 points, and that means that each movement action Mira takes, she will be able to move a total of 16 centimeters. You can see that as I change these values, Mira's total points on the upper part of the spec sheet increases. Force will dictate, amongst other things, the strength of Mira's attacks when she takes an attack action. I'm going to give Mira a 4 for force and a range of 4 as well. And you can see here that this automatically updates to show that Mira will have a range of 20 centimeters when taking an attack action. You can see that once I have base specs within the acceptable range, more icons appear on the spec sheet. Those icons are for hit points, the number of actions available to Mira, and for any prep tokens that Mira may start the game with. The last thing that I'm going to add to Mira's spec sheet is abilities. Abilities can be found in the drop-down, and they can also be referenced in the Ephemeral Path Ability Guide. I'm going to give Mira a D1 ability. I'm also going to give it a name. Longbow. You can see from this card that that ability is going to cost 6 points, which is then added to the figure points section of Mira's spec sheet. It can target 2 different units with a range of 5 centimeters, and the damage is going to be equal to her force value plus a foraged D4. We'll talk more about foraging dice later in this video. If I no longer wish to add any more abilities to Mira's spec sheet, then I can click the Print View button that cleans up the information that was only needed for when creating the spec sheet. I can then right-click and print, and I will print it in a portrait mode. This will allow you to fold the paper in half to make it smaller on the board. This process will need to be repeated for each figure in your figure set. You can create a new blank spec sheet by clicking on the Add Figure on New tab link. You can see that the total number of points that we assigned to Mira is still listed next to her name on the previous tab. A figure set cannot have more than a total of 100 points assigned to it.